Good evening and welcome back to 31 Horror Nights. It's October 17th and tonight's classic is Day of the Dead. While George Romero did make other of the Dead movies after this one, the next one was in 2005, 20 years after the release of Day of the Dead. And also considering the theme of night, dawn, and day, people sort of look at the original three movies as sort of its own trilogy. I'm personally giving Day of the Dead an 8 out of 10, though probably Dawn of the Dead was more consistently a good film from beginning to end than this one. Day of the Dead did have some improvements with much better effects and also a much more interesting plot, but it also sort of took a hit in the character department. Day of the Dead follows a group of military people and scientists who live in an underground bunker in Florida. And this is like months and months and months after the original outbreak. So at this point, humans have pretty much been overrun, driven out. The scientists are doing experiments on the zombies to see if maybe they could reverse the symptoms or even like train the zombies to maybe be pets or be more docile. And the military people are providing them, of course, a base of operation as well as protecting them. The problem is that the military people and the science people both hate each other. Like a lot. And considering the fact that the old leader of the military group died and the new leader is absolutely horrible, things get tense between the two parties. I greatly appreciated how survival played much less of a factor in this movie than it did in the other two movies. In this one, the characters are also analyzing what exactly this apocalypse is, how it works, and if possible, a way to reverse it. The main character of the movie is Sarah, one of the scientists, and the main villain of this movie is Rhodes, the new leader of the military party. And the zombies, I guess, but when it comes to problems with the main characters, the zombies are kind of secondary compared to Rhodes. Rhodes is power-hungry, selfish to the point of being sociopathic, and has a few lackeys that will do his bidding. One of the scientists is an old man named Logan, and I really liked his character. He was funny, he was clever, and he was fully willing to stand up to Rhodes even when it really did not seem wise at all. He's the one in charge of the most successful project of all these experiments, a zombie named Bub. Basically, the idea is that they're like training the zombie to be almost like a pet, basically. Like docile and not interested in killing humans. I was always under the impression that the zombies were after human flesh because they needed to eat it or else they would die again, but apparently that's not the case. Logan proved this by cutting out the innards of a zombie, and the zombie still wanted to eat human flesh, so he says they were operating purely on instinct. So the idea is if they could dial back or get rid of that instinct, a zombie would be completely docile. And it works. Bub seems to be a little bit more intelligent and definitely not interested in eating human flesh. By the way, when it comes to the zombies in this movie, I said in yesterday's video that I didn't really like the design of the zombies in Dawn of the Dead, considering the fact that it's mostly just gray face paint. And this one, they went all out with the special effects makeup. Zombies are different colors, some are gray, some are green, some are just their normal skin tones, they have really good gnarly wounds, and most of them have very inhumanly shaped faces. One thing I'll have to take away from this film is that the characters are not as good as they were in Dawn of the Dead. I didn't really like Sarah, I didn't really like most of the characters actually, and of course I'm supposed to hate Rhodes and most of the military people. The only character that I really found myself liking was Dr. Logan, but he wasn't in the film as often as I would have liked. I feel like if we had combined the horror of Night of the Living Dead, the characters of Dawn of the Dead, and the plot of Day of the Dead, this would have been spectacular, but that didn't happen. Still, I do vastly appreciate Day of the Dead trying to take this series into a different direction, and it does that very well. While it does have its flaws, I did think that Day of the Dead was a pretty good movie. And with that, let's go into the spoilers. Things really get tense when one of the people on the scientist party gets bitten by the zombies, and Sarah and friends, they manage to cut off his arm and cauterize the wound. They think it's early enough so that the infection is going to spread, but they can't be sure. And of course, that causes a lot of tension, especially considering in the little zombie outbreak, they have zombies in this cage and they corral them in and put something around a collar that they all have on their necks. And one of them got free and bit the guy on the scientist and also one of the military guys, and that person had to die. So of course, Rhodes completely blows up and just doesn't want anything to do with any of this anymore. He kills Dr. Logan and the other scientist guy, and he wants just the one people on the good guy party who knows how to fly the helicopter alive, and he doesn't care what happens to the other two. Things look pretty grim, but missing arm guy manages to escape the facility, get up to like the little like elevator like platform that raises and lowers outside, and he gets a bunch of zombies on the platform and then lowers it, uses like a dead man switch on the elevator button so that when he dies, the platform lowers, releasing a bunch of zombies into the underground facility. Naturally, this plunges everything into chaos. All the military people die, but as expected, they took their time with Rhodes' death, and in a way, it was actually pretty funny. He established a lot of times that he doesn't care that they could domesticate or like train the zombies. He just wants to figure out a way to kill them as quickly as he could. And of course, he showed a lot of hostility towards Bub. So, after Rhodes has gone to another part of the facility, while locking his men out, so basically just leaving them to die, he runs across Bub, and Bub is holding a gun that he found. He managed to escape from his bindings, and he actually came across the dead body of Logan, and he looked visibly sad about it. So I guess he figured that Rhodes did it, and he shoots Rhodes with a gun, and he's like slowly like walking away, and like he shoots him a few more times, and it gets to the point where he opens the door, and a zombie horde engulfs Rhodes. And when Bub walks away and Rhodes is being eaten, he says one of the most famous lines in this movie, which he tells the zombies to choke on his innards, basically like saying "screw you" to the zombies. I don't know if that's supposed to be like a really badass moment in death or like a really petty moment or whatever, but it's famous for a reason. It was a very, very striking death scene. The final scene of the movie is the three remaining good guys, quote unquote, on an island, which basically means they've completely given up on trying to save humanity. Like the last movie, Day of the Dead sort of has a bittersweet ending. Day of the Dead was definitely the most interesting of these three movies. There were some problems with it, namely the fact that I didn't have a lot of characters in it I really liked, but there were some ideas in the story of this movie that were really clever. It also has some of the most impressive practical effects I've ever seen in a movie. I liked watching it and thought it was a pretty good way to cap off the Of the Dead trilogy for 31 Horror Nights. And now that that's done with, I'll see you guys tomorrow with a whole new movie.